Hi, and welcome back to The Single Cook. My name is Tiffany, and I'm your host. We make recipes that are for 1 or 2 servings, sometimes a bit more if I'm planning on using it for multiple things, like we started with a roast chicken, and we divided that up into a couple of round 2 recipes. Today, I am going to be using a leftover. We're going to be using a barbecue pork steak leftover from the 4th of July to make some pork fried rice. And ideally, you would be using day-old rice, but I forgot to make mine yesterday, so I'm going to be making it today and letting it cool before I actually use it. If you don't have day-old rice, again, that's fine. Maybe let it cool for a little bit before you use it in your dish. So it's going to be something that you can make as soon as you get home, and then maybe 30 minutes after it's done, go back to it and make the rest of the dish. Or if you want to make it and put it right in, you can definitely do that as well. So today we are going to be using a couple of leftover ingredients, a couple of fresh ingredients. It's a very simple fried rice recipe. You can make it however you want. You can add to it. You can take away some things depending on what you like to do. So let's get into the ingredients. Okay, so the ingredients that we're going to be working with today. I have my leftover barbecue pork steak. This one I'm going to be adding a little bit more sauce to it. I didn't put a whole lot of sauce on the barbecue pork steak when I actually made it, so I'm going to be adding just a little bit more at the end. But this is probably about half of a pork steak because it's just for me. I have 1 large onion that I have diced up. I'm not going to be using the entire onion. I'm only going to be using about 1/3 of it, but I like to dice it up and have it ready to go in the fridge for all of my recipes. I have 1 medium carrot that I have already shredded. I may not use all of this, but I like to have it shredded for different things, but this is going to go in there. I have about 1/3 of a cup of frozen green peas. That's just from the bag. I have 1 egg that I have tiny whisked already. I have toasted sesame oil. I like to put it in a little bottle. That way it's easier for me to handle rather than the big giant bottle that I buy. But this is toasted sesame oil. I have Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. This is a local St. Louis sauce, but it is very delicious. And I'm going to be using that at the end. I have low sodium soy sauce. And I have a partial bottle that I'm going to be finishing off and then getting into the full bottle. But I won't be using the entire bottle. That would be ridiculous. I'm also going to be adding a little bit of fish sauce to mine. And then I have my rice. Now, this is not instant rice. This is long grain, cooked for 10, 11 minutes rice. So the very first thing that I am going to be doing is wash my rice. Because I did pay attention to Uncle Roger with all of his fried rice videos. So I will be washing my rice and then getting it cooking. So let's get into the video. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is turn our water on because we're going to be washing our rice. I've got a small saucepan here, and I've got that long grain rice that does have to be cooked. I did drop my measuring cup, so I will have to use a different one. We're going to be doing a 1 cup of the dry rice. So that will go in the pot. I like to use hot water to clean my rice. That's just a preference. That means that the water, when it gets to boiling, it does not have to go as far when it's already hot water. So we're going to swish the rice around in the water several times, trying to get most of that starch off. So when you pour it off, it'll be kind of a white, cloudy liquid. If you do it carefully enough, you can leave your rice in the pot without it spilling out or having to use a strainer. And we're going to rinse that 3 times. Getting as much of that starch off as possible. When I put this on to boil, it will go on high heat until it reaches a rolling boil, and then I will lower it to a simmer and let it cook for 10 minutes, stirring occasionally so it doesn't stick together. Then I will let it sit covered for 5 minutes before I lay it out on a cookie sheet to dry and cool. We're on our 3rd round of swishing this around. And the water will get clearer each time that you rinse it. So now adding the water that we're going to be using to cook it in, I'm leveling out that rice and checking the depth of the water. I want it to go from the tip of my finger right against the rice to that first knuckle line. Okay, we're going to put that on to boil or get started on a boil. And I'm going to do all of my rice first before I get into the rest of my ingredients. So rolling boil, then down to a simmer. Okay, while that rice is cooling in the fridge, let's get started on the rest of our ingredients. I'm going to light my janky stove and get a medium-sized skillet. I'm going to be using that toasted sesame oil to coat the bottom of it. And I want it to coat the entire bottom plus have a little bit extra, both for flavor and to make sure that it gets over every bit of my ingredients. So not quite enough. I'm going to add a few more tablespoons. And get that swirled around. Okay, let's start adding our ingredients. We've got that white onion, and I'm going to be adding about 1/3 of the white onion here. And I'll put the rest back in the fridge for another recipe. We're also going to do about 1/2 of that medium carrot, and that's been shredded up. And we're going to get that sauteing in the pan, in that oil, get it nice and coated. Okay, that has cooked. One thing I forgot to mention in my ingredients is my garlic. You all know I love my garlic, and we're going to be adding about 1 tablespoon of the garlic to that. And we're going to mix that around, get that cooking and fragrant while our onions go translucent and our carrots go a little bit softer. And you're going to see me start to move everything to one side of my pan. I want to cook my egg in the same pan, but I don't want it completely coating the onion and carrot. So I'm going to use the off-center or unlevel stove to my advantage and cook my egg in just one corner of my pan, while the onions and carrots and garlic continue to cook on the back side of my pan. We're going to just kind of gently move that until it all starts to cook through before we start to break it up. I don't want tiny pieces here. I kind of like bigger chunks of egg. So I'm going to keep moving it around and then lightly break it up before I start mixing it with my onions, carrots, and garlic. Break up any large chunks, but keep it moving in the pan. Okay, now we're going to add our peas, and those were frozen peas. We're going to add our barbecue pork steak that's been diced up and get those starting to warm through. They don't really have to cook, they just need to warm back up. And grab your rice, whether that's out of the fridge or off of the counter from day old. You're going to be adding it in the next step. So make sure nothing is stuck to the pan. I had cooked my rice for 10 minutes, let it sit for 5 in the pot with the lid on, and then spread it out on a cookie sheet and put it in the fridge to cool off and dry. So I'm going to add that back in. It is clumping a little bit, but not a whole lot. Cooling it really does help with that clumping. Set my pan aside, and we're going to start mixing that up. I'm going to mix it up before I add my sauces, just so I can make sure it's all evenly distributed. Okay, we're going to add our sauces. I'm going to use the rest of what's in this bottle of soy sauce, and then I end up not using any from the full bottle, so I'll have a full bottle for next time. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of that fish sauce, just kind of eyeballing it. And this would be the perfect place to add MSG if you wanted to. I forgot that I even had some today, so it didn't get added, but I do normally add a little bit of MSG to it, and sometimes a little bit of black pepper. Didn't really need it today, though, with the barbecue sauce, but stir, stir, stir. Probably about 5 to 8 minutes of stirring there. Getting it to that medium tone color, and then turning the heat off. So let's plate up our dish. We've got our bowl, we've got our fried rice, with all of those lovely ingredients, including the barbecue pork steak, onion, carrot, peas, egg, a little bit of garlic, that rice that we cooked and then let cool with the soy sauce and the fish sauce. And then I'm going to grab my Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce, give it a good shake, make sure that nothing is separated. We're going to add a little bit of a drizzle right over top of that. And that is our barbecue pork fried rice. And that was our recipe for today. Today we did that barbecue pork fried rice using the leftover barbecue pork steak from 4th of July. We just diced that up and used that as our round 2 ingredient. We added our fresh ingredients like the white onion, the carrot, and the egg. We also added some staple ingredients like the rice. You can absolutely use day-old rice. That is going to be the best option, but if you don't have day-old, then go ahead and use freshly cooked, but let it cool completely before you add it to your rice. That is very important to keep those grains separated and not sticky and mushy, so that's going to help quite a bit. We added things, special sauces like soy sauce, which is a staple for fried rice, but I also added the fish sauce and the Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. That is a St. Louis thing, but I absolutely love that sauce, and it's great with the barbecue pork steak. If you wanted to add any other ingredients to it, you could absolutely add things like bean sprouts, or you can do different proteins like shrimp, chicken, beef, any of those or all of those, depending on how hungry you are or how much you've got laying around. This is very much a throw kind of everything at it recipe. It's one of my favorites. I use it all the time. I hope that you'll cook it or make along with this video someday. So thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. My name is Tiffany, and this was The Single Cook.